we dweller mystery theater. Chi-chan away. Zarmagus. Oh my god, you guys did a lot of chatting before I got here. Yes, I believe. Boy Dweller Mystery Theater, Chi-chan away. Zarmagus. Welcome back to 428 Shibuya Scramble. Last time, we had quite a bit of stuff, including the true ending and some heart-wrenching stuff involving Achi's sister. Oh, wow. God. That was just a straight-up tearjerker. This time I have learned that there are quite a bit of side stories unlocked from the bonus content by doing the quiz, ironically. I hope if you fuck up you can do it again, because that would totally suck if you couldn't. But before that, let's do the Caanan, the true Caanan side story. Yes, there it is. It's gonna be interesting with all these anime scenes. Yes, Ji-chan, do your work. You can always listen at the same time. It's totally fine. Or at least, watch it afterwards if you need to concentrate. Your work is definitely more important than the stream. So, with that said, let's get back into it. Starring Caanan. Oh, wow. All animated. Fate Stay Night style. Alfard al-Shua, the solitary serpent. The snake has lost 8 of its 9 heads. In the Middle East, the snake is seen an ill omen. Those who let it take it as their name are said to be both wicked and extremely cunning. I assume this is Caanan. If I give in to sentimentality, I will have lost my light all over again. The blue sun rose into the sky. As the girl rushed through the airport, she was met with the intense light of the summery dawn. April 28th, 8:21, Singapore, Changi Airport. She let out a weary breath. A shaft of sunlight blazed across her face, and she squinted her eyes against the glare. The night had been a long one, and she could feel exhaustion taking hold. She wanted to stop and sink into one of the sofas in the airport lounge, but she didn't have time for that now. Hello, Hollow Mirage. Welcome to the stream. Oh. So that's what Caanan said. I just realized this is our first voice acting in the entire Let's Play. Oh my god. Okay. Was that all just a diversion? Who the hell does she think she is? Just tossing people away like that. Are the fringe groups of her own organization nothing more than halva to her? Also known by other names including halawa and halawe, a popular confection throughout the Arab world, typically made with ingredients such as sesame, apricots, or grains, kneaded together with sugar and some type of oil or fat. It is said to have originated in ancient Mesopotamia. Muttering curses that seemed at odds with her young face, the girl wove her way gracefully through the sea of travelers. Time was of the essence. All she had in her hidden pack were some dollar bills. The dollar is a unit of currency in several countries, including Canada and Australia, but here it refers to the United States dollar, controlled by the Federal Reserve Bank. At the time of this story, it is frequently used alongside the euro, as a standard currency for international transactions. She was just going to have to acquire the gear she needed on site. Solid snake style. It galled her to be so under-equipped. The only consolation was that at least she'd been able to arrange for a boarding pass in time. I don't know who this is.
Alani-sa.
Caanan refocused instantly as an unfamiliar man addressed her in Arabic. Was he a thief? Or some more dangerous third party? This was a country where both one's money and one's life could easily be at risk. She had one way to find out what kind of threat she was dealing with. Which gate is the flight to Japan? Her voice was sweet and girlishly soft. Okay, so she's speaking in a different voice. The man gasped. He hadn't been expecting this. They hadn't told him what he was really in for. This girl was the natural enemy of the serpent, a steely soldier in a proxy war. A professional freelancer who took any requests and who always carried out her mission. A mere hour earlier, she'd taken on an armed syndicate 30 members strong, the red flowers of blood left in her wake a testament to her rumored capabilities. The man was dumbstruck. What kind of twisted fairy tale was this? With mercenaries who looked like sweet little girls. It's a motherfucking anime. Huh? What's wrong? Were you not able to make the arrangements?
No, everything's fine.
He said hurriedly.
The flight is departing from gate 6. You're looking for your pass and your ticket.
They're in my right pocket. That was impressive. I didn't notice until you'd already handed them off. The man gasped again. His surprise shifted to caution. With all of the bystanders around, it should have been easy enough to make a handoff without even the recipient noticing. He was proud of his skills. But still, she'd seen right through him. Don't feel bad. At least I didn't spot you in advance. You're the man I spoke to on the phone outside, right? Caanan asked. That was quite the feat. I don't offer praise like this lightly, but I'm legitimately impressed. She's known since the moment I arrived, he thought. And she hadn't figured it out from his appearance. She just intuited it somehow. She had also immediately sensed that he was ashamed, even though he'd kept his face a perfect blank.
Nicely done. I see what they call you, the natural enemy of the serpent.
That seems a little bit premature, seeing as how I haven't killed it yet. First, the girl had acted deliberately blasé. Now she was being downright cynical.
She's a little unstable. And totally adorable.
He had to remind himself that this was her. How many soldiers must she have killed? How many battlefields has she survived? Hers was the life of a professional assassin. The fact that she had retained apparent normalcy in the midst of such disorder was more than a little unsettling. The man was astonished that this was the famed rival of the serpent. One did not strike at the snake without exceptional cunning and skill. Hers was the perfect camouflage, a mercenary in the guise of a child.
まあ、誤解でもないし、別にいいよ。
Well, so long as we're on the same page.
それで、話の裏は取れた。
Did you look into that story I asked you about?
あ、確認は取った。大越製薬研究所所長大沢の娘は確かに誘拐されている。
Okay, I see when this takes place.
Yes, I was able to confirm it. The director of Okoshi Pharmaceutical, Osawa, his daughter has indeed been kidnapped.
こちらのセルの活発化は何らかの陽動と見るべきだ。
We should consider the increase in cell activity on our end to be a mere diversion.
In order to avoid being compromised, anti-government organizations that carry out illegal activities, as well as terrorist groups, frequently organize themselves into smaller subgroups known as cells. Typically, only the leader of each cell knows how to contact the upper echelons. Thus, rank-and-file members who are exposed and arrested are incapable of leaking information about the larger organization to outsiders. The name cell is taken from the biological structure. Caanan gritted her teeth. Her latest mission, concluded just an hour ago, had been to meet with this armed group, the Serpent. That was fine. Everything had gone off splendidly without a hitch. The job had been even easier than she'd imagined. There was no cause to get bent out of shape. But the info she'd gotten her hands on had done quite a number on her mood. The Serpent herself is on the move. Japan, Shibuya. Okoshi Pharmaceutical. Possible CIA involvement. Presume large-scale urban terrorism at work. That message had lifted the veil from her eyes. At long last, Alphard herself was out in the open, the head of the snake exposed. What a perfect opportunity to cut it off. But of all places to set the stage, Japan? CIA involvement could pose a problem. She wouldn't be surprised if the Serpent had already coiled itself around the Americans. When it came to the Serpent, not even the US government could be trusted to keep itself free of influence. And the target was Okoshi Pharmaceutical. If that wasn't a sign, she didn't know what was. Was that just a coincidence? No. Allah was Al-Qadir, all-powerful. Yet the girl frowned in disappointment. What need would he have to go so far to pen such a perfect tale? She had thought of such grand acts of fate, or a relic of the distant past. But she could sense its hand in these events. She'd hurried to get the intel confirmed at once, and had quickly arranged a flight to Japan. Maybe she was a freelancer, not aligned with any particular organization, but she still had connections. She had many tools in her arsenal. People were often the most convenient. If they excelled at what they did, so much the better. Sorry, just hold on a second. Many individuals sought to curry her favor. Sympathizers like the man who'd made the handoff here, who would intervene on her behalf. Groups or individual activists who favor a particular political organization or ideology, and who demonstrate support without directly participating in the faction's activities.
ありがとう。 じゃあ行くけど他に何か言われてる？
I didn't even see that. Oh, wait, there's a Brisbane flight there. Thank you, she said. Is there anything else you need to tell me before I go?
現地に一人ワキールを用意した。
A wakil has been arranged to act as your representative on site.
渋谷への足を用意しているそうだ。着陸後、貨物室から降りられるようになっている。滑走路から直接ハイヤーを飛ばす。
Apparently, he's put together a way to get you to Shibuya. After you landed, drop off out of the hold. You'll be able to head off directly from the runway.
The man said.
あ、無駄足にならないよう祈っているとも。思いのほか、ラフィーク・カナンは我らのアニールから高い信頼と敬愛を受けている。
I pray this will not be a fool's errand for your sake. I have been surprised that our Amir holds such respect and fondness for you, or free Caanan.
今回は最悪、痛み分けでいいそうだ。
He hopes they will not fail, of course. But should you do, you will at least go down fighting.
She sighed. Go down fighting. So it's okay to die as long as I take the target down with me. The man thought of nothing but his honor, his pride. No reconciliation, no negotiation, no submission. 3 tenets that mattered more than preventing bloodshed. Whatever designs these two organizations had on each other were of no concern to her. But even so,
言われなくても
I don't need the warning.
3度目なんて死んでもごめんだ。
I have no intention of dying a third time. What happened to her? For once, her client's wishes aligned perfectly with her own. Her flaxen hair trailed behind her as she went to board her plane. She didn't look back. The flight from Singapore to Japan was roughly 7 hours. The serpent had surely anticipated that her enemy would pursue her there. In all likelihood, there would be a minimal window between Caanan's arrival in Japan and the serpent's plan coming to fruition.
ほんと、少年が腐ってる。
She really does love sinking to new lows. The serpent wouldn't be so clumsy as to let someone from back home in the Middle East, especially a foe like Caanan, find out about this by accident. If she'd let the plan leak, that meant it suited her purposes somehow. It would seem that she wanted to entice Caanan to risk hope before trampling her underfoot. You won't lay a finger on me. The voice sneered at her, a backstage murmur in her mind. She dealt with the enemy's diversion and learned of the plan just in the nick of time and rushed off to Japan without a second's hesitation. Japan was where it would all be decided. If she didn't do battle with the serpent, she would lose yet another close friend. Had the serpent engineered this situation simply to torment her?
けど、今回は少し予定が違う。
But things aren't gonna go how you think this time.
渋谷の文字はお前とは相性が悪いみたいだ。
Shibuya is a poor fit for you. She spoke to herself to calm her gnawing impatience. The time it took to write Shibuya and the time it took to write Alphard were nearly the same, but the youthful and complex nature of the city of Shibuya won out. Her instincts were something akin to fortune-telling, a tendency to reimagine the world around her in a way that was neither wishful thinking nor sour grapes. She had a sense of conviction that hovered near the truth. but she knew she couldn't let herself be optimistic. The serpent possessed a powerful venom. It was possible that even if Alphard's plan were foiled, the life Caanan hoped to save would still be lost. There truly was no time to spare. Crushing the fringe group in Singapore had gone more quickly than she'd anticipated. She had planned on obliterating them at the break of dawn, but she had been struck by a sudden familiar sense of urgency and had acted an hour ahead of schedule. That change of plans had led to this. She'd obtained the intel just slightly earlier than Alphard might have anticipated, and had put speed above all else in arranging the trip to Japan. Right now, she could only hope that the single hour she'd bought herself would let her save her friend's life.
Maria.
Here we go. Yes! Maria. A warm red flooded her mind. They'd met 2 years ago. She remembered the day as an ordinary one. An unassuming tourist was getting hassled by the same sorts of guys that caused trouble all over the world. Caanan's stash of her favorite snack had just run out, and it had left her in an irritable mood. Maybe that was why she'd stopped at the sight of the scuffle. Not that she had any interest in helping. The men just gave off an eyesore of a color. Their scent was far too noisy, and she wanted to be rid of them.
Shukran, Jasleen,
said the grateful tourist, her hand outstretched. She asked if Caanan would be her guide, which Caanan tried to ignore, but the young woman persisted. Oh my god, this is adorable. This girl was a person raised in peace, from a peaceful country. I've heard that phrase before, Fata Morgana, but yeah, it's not often used. It's more used in like olden times type things. Caanan wasn't the type to hold that against her, the kind to hold that against her, or rail against the unfairness of the world. It didn't mean she wanted to put up with it either. A Yabania like her was practically a different species. How could they even understand each other? Caanan was closer to an animal herself, and respectable people didn't get close to animals that were still untamed. Humans had overcome their feral side. They had become creatures of intellect. When such intellect was fostered over the years, the benefits were clear. And yet, is that somebody else? Oh, no, that's, is that her? Or is that like the little kid next to her? Fucking hell. I'm gonna say it's her.
Let's be friends, Sadiki. How about it?
The tourist approached her, oblivious. Yep. Oh my god! Caanan could recall the warm color from that moment. It still triggered her memories. It was a pleasant color, one that she had been touched by before. This tourist, Maria, was not so remarkable as to draw the eye. Nothing about her seemed especially worthy of admiration. There was just something special about the... God! Wholesome smile she offered to the dangerous creature she should never have approached. Oh my god! 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 Oh my god!
そっか、天然なんだ。
Wow. I didn't think that would be her voice. She sounds a lot deeper than I thought she would, which is, I guess, good for me.
You're very, spontaneous, aren't you?
Caanan smiled. There was something powerful about people who couldn't get a read on their own situation. It was the first time she'd smiled earnestly in a long while. The first time since she'd lost her light a second time. Oh my God! It would still be several hours before the plane landed in Japan. She did her best to ease her inner tension, to let herself rest in preparation for combat. Her orders were simple: save her friend, capture the serpent. The objective was the same as it had been before. That summer, 4 years ago, when she got the tattoo on her left arm. That very long day when she'd been reborn as the Caanan she was now. Ooh, wow, this is going to be quite extensive. Looks like we're getting a flashback to that. The rumbling of a diesel engine sounded in her ears. The color that went with that sound indicated that the engine was running well. The interior of the compartment was rife with the smell of Ramal. F-sand. I don't know. Is that a typo? Maybe, I have no idea. A dangerous blue, a gentle red, a painful yellow. Those the colors of the many people aboard the train as it chugged along. The train had set out from Al Haditha, northwest of Baghdad, and after a journey of 300 kilometers, it was approaching the Jordan border. At the front of the train was an antique diesel locomotive. This was followed by first-class carriages, coach-class carriages, and also several of the women-only carriages unique to the Middle East. It was a long train, though not exceptionally so. In some Islamic countries where women and men are prohibited from sitting together for religious reasons, women-only train cars are common. Depending on the country, the sexual segregation may be so strict as to apply even to children. Sometimes even young boys were separated from their mothers in order to ride in men-only carriages. Damn, jeez. It was remarkable that there was a line running between Iraq and Jordan. Traffic between the two countries, especially via railway, had been drastically reduced as a result of war. Many of the lines had long since fallen into disuse. Now that the West was working towards reconstruction and stabilization of Iraq, Japan had also helped plan a railway between Iraq and Jordan, and had laid down a temporary rail line. The train's final stop was not the border, but 300 kilometers beyond it, in Amman, the Jordanian capital. This trip would be a turning point. Sundown would see the venerable old train service come to an end. The compartment where Caanan rode was boisterous with noise and human energy. Wind and the sound of chugging wheels rushed in together through windows with no glass. As the only rail service currently linking Iraq and Jordan, the new line drew passengers from all walks of life. A freelance journalist returning from Baghdad, an Indian peddler carrying a piece of luggage larger than himself, a group of women who appeared to be members of some Scandinavian NGO. No one seemed bothered by the clamor. The passengers shouted and prattled on as they pleased. Various sounds, miscellaneous colors, profuse scents, myriad textures, manifold flavors. All of these sensations mixed together as if in a stew pot, and Caanan gulped them down. Yet the stimulation they provided was weak. It was like lamb without enough salt. And so she reached into her pocket for a dose of her favorite pick-me-up, crunching it between her teeth. Ooh, she's getting high. Caanan was in a foul mood. She was on this train to do a job, and nothing had happened for 3 hours now. So far, the journey had proceeded without incident, and she'd had no opportunity to act. Siam, the man she called Sharik, had assigned her this mission. They were traveling together. Theirs was a rare team. No longer were they Mudarib and Mutadarib, master and student. They were partners now. Still, this was a complete letdown. The atmosphere on the train set her on edge. Despite the instability of present-day Iraq, there were no soldiers aboard, only several policemen. Supposedly, the limitations of the military presence was all out of concern for the complicated political situation, but she couldn't help but wonder if it was more of a concern for saving money on soldiers' pay. The major powers touted peace while enforcing virtue when they could be bothered. This railway is just one more example of their dubious policies, supposedly established to help foster interpersonal exchange and economic revitalization. It had originally been used for military transport until public travel was more useful for somebody's agenda.
退屈。善意の国際協力ってものが本当にあるなんて思ってもみなかった。これの持ち主はよっぽど平和で幸せなんだな、シャム。
This is so boring. Here we are, the carefree passengers of a modern conveyance, operated by a well-intentioned international corporation. Whoever owns this outfit has grown fat on peace.
ひねくれているな。善意の第三者は信用ならないか、カナン。
Don't be so cynical.
Her companion said.
Do you really distrust the intentions of others so much?
別に信用なんてシャムしかできない。
The only one I trust is you.
そういうのが相手なら仕事はいつも楽だろうなと思っただけ。嫌ってるわけじゃない。
I just figured having you around would make our jobs a lot more fun. I'm not mad or anything.
結構襟好みがないのはいいことだ。
It's a good thing, not being too particular.
だが善意と私欲どちらが組みやすいかは仕事の内容によるな。
Just keep in mind that whether we align with the good guys or the bad guys depends on the job.
善意には損得がない分人間らしい交渉が通じない。それはそれで厄介だぞ。
So-called virtue has no value unless it provides some real benefit to somebody. Otherwise, it's just a bother.
Virtue. Caanan sniffed. Virtue was just another name individuals gave to their own biased sense of justice. A rigid and fanatical concept subject to any number of arbitrary beliefs. One man's virtue was another man's depravity. The very idea made her think of those interminable meanings between political factions. People puffed themselves up as wise and sat at the conference table without the slightest interest in the other side's values. To them, all that matters was what they had already decided was good and right.
損得がないね。どうすれば利益が出るのか、どうすれば生き残れるか分かってるのに、目先のお金には転ばないってこと？
Some real benefit to somebody. So they know how to profit, not to survive, and still manage not to go for the money that's right under their noses.
もっと派手に人生そのものをつまずき続ける？
Can someone really keep living their life like that, without eventually stumbling?
客観的に見れば
You need to look at things objectively.
安酒のようなものだ。それは手に入れやすく悪酔いしやすい。
Simple moral philosophies like cheap booze. It's easy to get your hands on and easily makes you sick.
泥酔している人間に話し合いは期待できない。説得するより先にまず荒ごとで酒を抜かなきゃならん。
Can't expect to get through to someone who's dead drunk. Before you can convince them of your point, you need to beat the alcohol out of them.
例えば眉間を秒速で打ち抜いて。
Like I've been putting a bullet between their eyes.
ああ、まあ頭にアルコールが詰まっているかは疑問だが。
Perhaps, if it's the brain that's drunk.
The man named Siam curled up the corners of his mouth. Though he wasn't a fundamentalist Muslim, he still detested alcohol as a tool of the devil. But his use of booze as a metaphor was now inspired less by his inner demons than by his unique sense of humor.
もう笑わない方がいいって言ったのに。
I told you to stop smiling.
シャム笑うと顔が怖いんだから。
It makes you look creepy. Harsh, yes, but it needed to be said. Sam's smile was a rare bird newly come to roost. The two had known each other for several years now. Back in the day, she had never known him to smile. As a change of habit, it felt unsettlingly like a sort of surprise attack.
知っている。そう忠告されて以来、笑わないよう努めていた。
I know. I've been trying my best not to ever since you first gave me that bit of advice.
まあ、俺たちの雇い主は苦行を美徳としている。笑わないというのは方針に合っているだろう。
Anyway, our employer values austerity. Not smiling ought to be our general policy.
Caanan herself was equally guilty of a rare display. Hello, Webless. Welcome to the stream. Her own sour expression had completely turned around. The only time she expressed human-like joy was when she and Siam were alone together. Her name was Caanan. Trained by Siam, a veteran mercenary, she had just turned 14 years old. Caanan was not her real name, but a nickname given to her 2 years prior. Hers was a familiar story, that of a child who had lost her parents and her village to the ravages of war. Unlike most who shared such a beginning, however, she'd had two major strokes of luck. The first was the ability she had been born with. The second was that she'd met someone who taught her how to foster that ability. As a girl orphaned by war, she had almost inevitably taken up arms. Making herself useful to the powers that surrounded her had been the only way to survive. The only people she could depend on were the only ones who gave her anything. Were them. The moment she didn't meet their expectations, she would go back to being a mere orphan. And so this girl, a victim of war, fell under the protection of the warmongers and was trained to be one of their soldiers. But then, she was picked up by a man, Siam, who freed her from those who had robbed her of her past. He had no ideology. He was unlike the others she had known in their broken world. The wandering people who had formed a new nation to be their promised land. And the ones that they had driven out, now wanderers themselves who styled themselves liberators. Siam was a mercenary who had been hired by those would-be liberators, but he paid no heed to the ideologies of either side. He was a soldier who lived to fight, knowing he was unlikely to see the conflict's end during his lifetime. Caanan didn't know how long Siam had been working as a mercenary. By the time she'd wound up in his care, He was already a veteran worthy of her confidence. He told her that he'd been kicked out of the army, that he preferred solar missions where he could focus on an objective without worrying about fellow operatives. In that sense, he was something closer to an agent provocateur than an ordinary mercenary. Siam was well aware of his distinct style and position. He sometimes revealed a hint of shame at the fact that the assignments he was given were not officially missions, Muhima, but instead were referred to as jobs, ammo. Still, he was known as a valuable asset on the Liberation Front. They were a guerrilla organization facing off against superior Israeli forces. A lone mercenary who could carry out major operations by himself, he had fit in well with the guerrilla strategy. The fact that he was disposable if and when the time came was also quite appealing. And Caanan, once Siam took her in, had grown not as a soldier, but as a specialized covert operative. That was her good fortune. Pretty sure 2 years before the main story, Mystery Theater. This story takes place 2 years before that. The orphan's talents weren't particularly well suited to acting as part of a unit. She was far better at being a solo diversionist acting against the enemy organization. And so she had ceased to be a soldier, instead training out as a diversionist. She fulfilled her new role adeptly. Siam and Caanan. They worked in concert as secret agents, infiltrating, gathering intel, conducting sabotage. She learned to operate without backup. Typically, one of the duo would sneak into enemy territory alone, while the other acted in a logistics or liaison role. Here and now, however, with their objective aboard this moving train, responding to an urgent request from their employer, the two were working together as a team.
でも列車で輸送するってそんなに大きなものなの？今回のは。
So if this train is a transport, the objective must be something big, right?
いや、物自体は個人で所有できる大きさらしい。
No. What we're after is apparently small enough to be carried on one person.
中身は俺たちの管轄ではない。事実としてそれがあるかないかの確認が先だ。
We're not authorized to look at the contents. The first task is simply to confirm whether it's really on board or not.
なんだ、それならもう終わりだ。私とシャムで見て回ったんだから間違いないよ。
Well, in that case, the job's done. We've both been looking around, and I think it's pretty clear.
この列車は外れ。どこをどう見ても普通の車両だし、おかしな手触りもないし。
There is nothing out of the ordinary about it, and it doesn't feel wrong either.
輸送の予定が1日ずれたか、こっちの動きが漏れたか。そもそも初めからそんな計画はなかったってとこじゃない？
Either they're moving our objective at some other time, they got word that we would be here, or there was no such plan in the first place.
いや、今回の情報に限って空振りはない。信用できる提供者だからな。
No, the intel's solid. I trust the person who provided it.
They received the intelligence just 2 days prior. Even by their own fast-moving standards, this job was inordinately rushed. A member of American military deployed in Iraq had contacted a Mossad agent. Indications suggest planning to deliver and hand over a weapon. The Israeli Institute for Intelligence and Special Operations, Mossad conducts foreign intelligence gathering and counter-terrorist operations, along with covert infiltration and the like. It is one of the arms of the Israeli intelligence community, along with entities such as the Shabak, Israeli Security Agency, which handles domestic counterintelligence. Historically, the detector of Mossad has acted as the governing chairperson of these agencies. Mossad is regarded as one of the premier intelligence agencies in the world. Board Iraq-Jordan Railway and gather intel. Recover payload if possible, destroy if not. Weapon to be transferred, enemy escort, and loadout all unknown. No logistical support will be provided during operation. It was uncertain why the enemy had chosen to move the mystery weapon along such a dangerous overland route. But the information came from a source that both Siam and the Liberation Front trusted absolutely. And the source had made it clear that the enemy forces were in a hurry to transfer this unknown new weapon. This was a tip that the Liberation Front could not overlook, and they directed Siam to act immediately. The situation was somewhat delicate because the enemy had decided to use a train that crossed the border as their means of transport. Given the tenuous political balance in the region, the Liberation Front couldn't risk open military action targeting an international train running from Iraq to Jordan. Political pressure from Israel and the U.S. might have led the Jordanian government to give tacit consent to a weapons transfer. But if the freedom fighters intervene on a large scale, it would surely invite a military response. Worst case, things might spiral out of control and trigger yet another full-scale war in the Middle East. Thus, the job at hand required utmost secrecy. The enemy would disavow involvement in any clandestine transport, and those who moved against them must be similarly able to deny any involvement. Stopping and destroying the secret payload was a job for covert agents. And so Siam and Caanan had hurriedly boarded the train, where they'd been spending their time staring out the window. Four hours had passed without any incident aboard. Now they were arriving at the halfway point in their journey, the Jordanian border. There, abruptly, things began to change. Without warning, the train, which had hitherto seemed like a promise of safe passage, grew thick with the dangerous scent of an escort convoy. They're making adjustments to the train. What's up with that, Siam? I didn't hear that announced. I've never heard of that happening mid-journey.
レール幅の問題だ。これまでレールはスタンダードゲージだが、ここからはロシアの援助で敷設された幅1524ミリのブロードゲージが残っているんだろう。
The problem is with the rails. The one we're using running on are standard gauge. Past this point, the tracks are all 15 24mm broad gauge and were installed with assistance from the Russians.
Standard gauge railway track with a 1435mm space between the rails. It is the standard in the United Kingdom, where it originated, and due to internationalization, an estimated 60% or more of the world's railways use standard gauge. Broad gauge railway with track space farther apart than standard gauge. The broader gauge offers some advantages, such as improved stability for cars and better resistance to crosswinds. Russia, India, and Finland are among the countries that use broad gauge, along with some parts of Spain.
レール幅が異なる路線を運行する列車は1両ずつ車体を持ち上げ台車ごと車輪を付け替える。
In order to run on the new rails, each of the train cars need to be lifted up in sequence so that their wheels can be replaced. Damn. The wheel exchange man? Oh, the wheel exchange made for an extended delay. Each car in turn had to be removed from its couplings. Then each car was loaded onto a lift and refitted for the broad gauge tracks.
手間がかかるね。走れないならここから走れる列車に乗り換えればいいの。
This is gonna take a while. Caanan grumbled. I wish we could just transfer over to a train that could head on from here.
ダイヤの遅延に文句を言うほど裕福な乗客はいないさ。
This is gonna take a while. Oh, no. What? And he's saying,
Well, the passengers on this train aren't rich enough to complain about a delay in schedule.
荷物を改められるわけでもない。列車も乗客も無事目的地に着けるのならそれでいい。
And the way the rail company doesn't need to change up the cargo. So, as the train and the passengers arrive safely at the destination, that's all that matters.
そう。確かにいちいち文句を言うほど余裕はないよね。私たちには。
yeah, I suppose we of all people had no cause for complaint.
けどシャム。
But Siam. Caanan sensed that there was more going on than just switching over a train's wheels. The train was being expanded. A freight car, clearly meant to carry goods of higher quality, was being added, sandwiched between a new pair of passenger cars. A total of 3 new cars were added. The only passengers in the 2 compartments surrounding the freight car were armed soldiers.
青一色だ。1車両に7人。合わせて14人。これも予定にあった。
They're all the same shade of blue. 7 soldiers per car. 7 soldiers per car. Total of 14. Were you expecting this?
いや、ここまでは考えもしなかった。
No, I hadn't thought this far ahead.
貨車の増設か。あからさまだが事前対応は難しいな。
Adding a new freight car, huh? Usually this would have been difficult to prepare for ahead of time. Hold on, you guys, just a second. I just need to get a quick bathroom break. I'll be right back. Sorry guys, just a little bit longer. Hold on. Alright, sorry guys, I am back. Let's get back into it. They were seeing a complex plan unfold, one that would be traceable after the fact, but which might be impossible to stop while it was in motion. They now face a significant force of enemies that they might have to neutralize using only the firepower they had on their persons. Based on the orders Siam had received, there was zero chance they'd receive any backup.
あいつらが兵士なのは間違いないけど、どこの所属かまでは見えないよ。
They're definitely soldiers. Can't tell what army, though.
彼らが乗客に偽装した兵士であり、貨車が加わったのなら問題ない。イスラエル側の兵士かどうかは貨車の中身が証明してくれるさ。
They're soldiers disguised as passengers. And if they're here with the freight car, it won't be an issue. The contents of those cars will tell us if they're Israeli soldiers or not.
そっか。今わかるのは、私たちのことはバレてないってことか。
I see. So all we know right now is that they're not onto us.
連中、安全だと判断したからことに出たんだよね。
It looks like they've decided that everything's safe.
そういうことだ。
Our only stroke of luck so far.
The freight car transfer cast everything into doubt. It seemed to confirm that there was indeed a weapons delivery taking place. But recovering the payload was going to be more difficult than anticipated. The train transfer process finished without a hitch. The other passengers paid a little heed. Evidently, they were accustomed to this sort of delay.
強引な計画だね。おかげで応援を呼ぶことも装備の補充もできなかった。
Quite the fix our Caanan has put us in. We can't call for backup and we don't have a chance to resupply.
後先考えてない計画はやっぱり独特の善意から来るもの。
Fanatics are never very good at planning ahead, I suppose.
まあ、周りが見えてないあたり、強硬派らしいと言えなくもない。
Or even stopping to sniff the air once in a while. Damn hardliners.
At last, the train left the border behind. There were no planned stops between the frontier and Amman. Caanan and Siam needed to complete the job before the train arrived in Amman, which meant within the next 4 hours. The odds were 2 against 14, a difference of power so great it seemed absurd to even consider a plan of attack.
ザイームの配置ミスだよ、シャム。2人でやる仕事じゃない。うん。あからさまに来るならいっそ爆破すればいい。停車中にセムテックスでも仕掛ければよかったんだ。
Your Zaim messed up in assigning this mission, Siam. This isn't a job for 2 people. Given how bleak things are, we should just destroy the whole payload. We should have planted some Sentex back when the train was stopped. A plastic explosive developed in Czechoslovakia. It is clay-like and easily formed into different shapes. Similar type of explosive, composition 4. So that's what the C in C4 stands for. Oh my god, this cat. Used by the U.S. Armed Forces. Is perhaps more famous. It is used by many military organizations due to its durability and ease of transport.
乱暴だが効率的だな。俺たちの仕事が殲滅ならそれで行きたいところだが。
That would be dramatic but effective. If annihilation was our job, I'd have leaned that way too.
They had checked the cars pretty thoroughly before they departed. Sneaking something aboard the freight car would have practically been too close to impossible.
じゃあどうするの？正面から14人はちょっときついよ。
So what do we do? Taking on 14 soldiers head on is a bit of a tall order.
いや、そんな賭け事をするまでもない。
No, we're not going to take that big of a gamble.
人手なら増える。もう一人ここで合流する予定だ。
Oh, I wonder if it's Alfard.
If you're worried about our numbers, that's going to change. Someone else is joining up with us here.
Huh? Caanan was shocked. She felt an unfamiliar kind of fear. As far as she had known, Siam never teamed up with anyone but her. It's probably Alfard.
失礼。同席するよ。
Pardon me, but I'd like to share your seat.
他の席は男ばかりでどうにも居づらいんでね。
The others are all occupied by men, and I'd prefer not to sit with them. As soon as the stranger spoke, Caanan saw Sam's color shift to a pale, pale blue. A bad sign.
失礼。同席するよ。
Pardon me, the newcomer repeated. I'd like to share your seat. Her voice was low. The muscles in her arms were taut like corded rope. To Canaan's eyes, her visage was a complex meld of shifting colors. So what is this? Like Caanan has some kind of like aura sight ability? It's some kind of crazy vision power to see people's like auras or something. Is this? It went without saying. This was their sole reinforcement, their third teammate.
構わない。座ってくれ。
We don't mind. Please sit.
どうも。なあ、場所を譲ってくれないか、お嬢さん。子供は保護者の横に座るものだ。その位置は私向けだろ。
Thanks. Say, mind letting me have your spot, miss? Children should sit next to their guardian. I should be in your place. Caanan sighed.
シャム、お嬢さんは耳が遠い？それともアラビア語はわからない？
Siam, is this young lady hard of hearing? Or does she just not speak Arabic?
カナン、俺の横に座れ。彼女は今回の情報提供者で、我々の雇い主の一人だ。俺とは古い馴染みでもある。
Caanan, come sit next to me. This is one of our employers, the one who provided our intel. She's an old friend of mine.
Caanan said nothing. But she did get up from her seat and sat next to Siam. She'd do as he asked, although she didn't trust this woman. She didn't like the way he'd said old friend. It brought up all her natural cynicism.
ご挨拶だな。シャム、この子がお前のバックアップか？
Charmed, I'm sure. Is this kid your backup, Siam?
いや、今回俺はダーファブだ。こいつはシナーン向けてな。腕は水準以上だが、村っ気がありすぎる。
No, the protection this time around. She's more suited to offense. Her skills are the real deal, so is her attitude.
Hello, T. Welcome to the stream.
目の前に相手がいないと目を覚まさないのでは、守りは任せられる。
But she's not lookout material. She only really gets going when there's someone to fight.
それは。まだ訓練中というわけか。
Well, well. So she's still in training. The woman regarded Caanan with a cold gaze. She gave the impression of a snake trying to sense the body temperature of potential prey.
いいね。可愛いじゃないか。タイプだよ。
She's cute. I approve. Oh wow, Damn, I am really now extremely glad I chose this voice for her, given her speech mannerisms.
で、その左手は人並みに動くのか？
How's her left arm? Can she move it all right?
訓練途中のお嬢さんは体の管理もできない半人前？
Or has your little lady in training not learned how to take care of herself yet? Caanan glared sidelong at the woman. She wasn't offended by the remark itself. The fact was that her left arm was still in pain. What unsettled her was this woman's powers of perception, able to detect Caanan's injury through the heavy cloak she wore. I have a passive perception of 25, baby. You are not hiding a single thing from me.
動くよ。少しすりむいただけ。すぐ良くなるし、問題はない。
It's just a scratch. It won't be a problem.
そう。ならいいが、 原因は傷をつけたのは列車に乗る前か乗った後か。
Okay, but how did it happen? Did you get injured before or after you boarded the train?
それでお前がまだ半人前の兵士かただの間抜けかわかるんだ。
That'll tell me whether you're just half a soldier or simply a fool. Caanan did not reply.
だんまりか。おいシャム、どっちなんだ？
The silent treatment, huh? Hey, Siam, which is it? He didn't answer. Huh? Has she seen something in that silence?
はあ、そういうこと？
Of course. This stranger could read Siam's silence better than anyone, better than his own partner. The woman's stoic face grew just a shade brighter. Her smile was entirely sarcastic, but at least it was a display of human emotion. It was a smile as if to say, well done, as if Caanan's injury were some fated thing.
見たところ戦争孤児か。まったく懲りないなお前も。仕込みは何年になるんだ？
Oh god, this fucking cat. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm guessing she's a war orphan? Seems you don't learn either. How long since you started working on her? What do you think you are, Batman?
引き受けたのは2年前だ。
I took her in 2 years ago.
2 years ago. 2003, the Middle East. A war orphan. All that information taken together left no question about just what battlefield she's seen. The Iraq War. She had lived through the long night of a war that, for the winning side, had been little more than a display of overwhelming resources and overwhelming technology.
安心したよ。半人前だが心構えはあるわけだ。
That's a relief. She's only half a person, but at least she's ready.
では技術はこれから見させてもらおう。
I'm looking forward to seeing her skills in action.
お前が連れてくる以上は一発には鍛えられているだろうしな。
If you brought her along, Siam, her training must be sufficient. Now that she'd inferred Canaan's background, the woman's enmity seemed to abate. Their initial reluctance to trust each other had apparently been mutual. Caanan wasn't necessarily happy, but if this was the team Siam wanted, she would accept it. I have a feeling this side story is going to last the entire stream. Okay. It's a long one. Damn. As the woman had observed, Caanan had been trained by Siam after all. A lot of background stuff. Reminds me, this chapter reminded me of a Ryukushi. You know what this reminded me of? The beginning of Matsuri Bayashi, which had just tons upon tons of political background information to the story. That's what this side story is reminding me of so far. As the woman had observed, Caanan had been trained by Siam after all. And Siam's judgment was absolute. Caanan knew him as her instructor and mentor, the ideal soldier, utterly reliable. She turned her gaze away from the woman and looked out the window. The passing scenery drew out her memories of life that she'd lived over the past few years. A girl who had lost all her relatives to war. The tale of a child who had never held a gun before, becoming a full-fledged soldier at the heels of a veteran mercenary. All of it came hazily drifting back into her mind. the life I'd had before was taken away by the war. The echoing of gunfire in the distance, the sound of buildings ablaze. I couldn't help but think how much smaller and simpler those sounds were than I'd imagined them to be from stories. No place had seemed safer to me than my house, and it was reduced to ruin by a single artillery shell. A few moments after the blast, a group of strange men came barging in. Oh my god, Mystery Theater, totally! I wasn't gonna say it, but... Oh yeah, 100%. She's basically Setsuna Fsei, Caanan. And, who was the counterpart was Ali Al-Sanchez, I think was his name. Is basically the counterpart of, Alfard here. Totally. Alfard and Siam, I guess, in different ways. I could hear their heavy footsteps, their coarse voices muttering.
They're dead. They're dead. We killed them. We killed them.
Luckily for me, my father had been thinking quickly and had sent me into the basement. Unluckily, he and my brothers were still in the living room when the blast hit. It wasn't just the furniture that was gone without a trace. I sat in the basement thinking. From the men's conversation, I realized that they were looking for my father's corpse, my older brothers and my own. I can remember every word those soldiers said. Something had clicked in my mind as I had listened. I committed to memory how many men there were. Or rather, I got it memorized. What their voices sounded like, what names they called one another, so that I would never, ever forget. Focused on hearing their every word, for the next hour, I felt neither fear nor boredom. I gathered there was no trace of my father's body, but they had found my older brothers. Satisfied, the soldiers left. All of this happened when I was 12 years old. Trapped under the rubble, it was days before I was rescued. I guess she had supplies to eat there or something. I'd lost my family and any place to belong. The adults who found me realized that I'd suffered emotional scarring, but they didn't have time to bother with that.
They're dead. They're dead. We've killed them. We killed them.
Yes. There are too many things one needs to do in life. In my case especially, I expect I'm going to be overworked. It was quite simple, the reason I took up arms. It was not atonement that I sought, but equal compensation for what I'd lost. Which lock-on? Hilarious Armigas. Damn, like that was such a crazy plot line with the two lock-ons. It was not atonement that I sought, but equal compensation for what I'd lost. Unjust usurpers, deeds whose cost I was reckoned in blood. I'd still not been paid what I'm owed. This is a flashback within a flashback here. The balance must be settled. I only ask as much as they took from me. That is why I carry on, never resting, with the relentless precision of a machine. It is is simply a tale of sorrow giving way to resentment, giving way to cold reason. Was it odd that I never felt malice? Perhaps I could see too clearly. I could see things on a broader scale than others. Could see where the evil was, where the flaws were. Could see it all so clearly that I was dumbstruck into sheer objectivity. The weak are evil. My family, my father, people I should have been proud of, had too many flaws. People of conscience who esteemed a righteous society, embraced complicated and contradictory things, tried to become good sheiks. An Arabic word denoting the leader of a tribe, or a wise man. An honorary term of respect for someone who commands trust. In the modern day, it is often used to refer to scholars, community representatives, and people in high-ranking management positions. Their many failings created enemies, invited war, and brought on their defeat. Violence was a vulgar thing, far beneath the cultured behavior of my father and brother, but it still had the final word over them in the end. We may have been cruel to those who would shame us, yet we have tolerated too many of these foreign invaders. Balance is key. One must clad myself in complexities, yet be simple at the core. Taking action always requires a first step. If someone takes from you, you take it back. If they kill you, you kill them back. I don't think that's possible. Action and reaction. We should have thought more simply. For perceiving everyone different than ourselves as enemies, we brought on the war long before it was inevitable. Even if my father and brother had been operating in a vacuum, they probably would have done the same. But every family has so many kin to hold dear, so many others who cloud their perspective. Except for me. Ha! My family and my kin are utterly gone. Apart from the determination I already possessed, I knew I needed to hone myself. My growing skills as a soldier were necessary for me to achieve my goals, and more basically necessary for me to even survive. My goals. In the beginning, that was all I really thought about. Once I'd become an orphan, I resolved not to rely on anyone. My trauma wouldn't let me trust anyone else. And yet eventually, I wound up feeling a sense of trust for this man who found me and committed 2 years to training me. It was something I never thought I'd feel again.
素人を鍛えられるほど気の長い奴はここにはいないそうだ。
There probably isn't anyone around with the patience to train a complete novice.
責任ではないが、お前には俺がつくことになった。
I wasn't qualified, but I wound up sticking with you.
Siam was always more freelancer than soldier. He belonged to a liberation movement, but he made his living taking on jobs as a reliable mercenary. Refers here to the Palestinian Liberation Movement, a political movement formed in response to the conflict arising between the newly resettled Jewish people and the pre-existing Arab Palestinian residents, advocating freedom of the Palestinian people from the Israeli rule. There had been a long recurring cycle of terrorism and revolt, followed by periods of peace. But to this day, the issue remains fundamentally unresolved, and that's still true. I guess his role gave him a lot of freedom, because unlike a grunt who simply fired guns, he was allowed to act as a sort of instructor. He had no close ties with his organization. which is convenient for me. I've taken up arms not because of any ethnic conflict, but for my own personal cause.
教官としての報酬を受け取ってはいるが、これは本契約ではない。時間の無駄は互いのためにもならない。お前に適合性がないと判断すれば、その時点で契約を切る。
I'm being compensated for teaching you. But that doesn't make this some kind of formal contractual arrangement. Neither of us should waste the other's time. If I decide you're not suited for what I'm teaching, I'm calling the deal off.
Luckily for me, Sam ignored my unique background and upbringing, and simply trained me to be a fighter. Growing as an instructor along the way.
銃は性能を裏切らない。オートマチックは兵士の戦闘能力を平均化する。
Good firearms will not limit your abilities. Automatic weapons act as equalizers for soldiers on the battlefield.
持つ側の技術が水準に達してしまえば、誰も彼も同じことしかできないようになっている。
If both sides has equal technology, then everyone is theoretically capable of the same things as everyone else.
逆を言えば、現在の水準に達していない銃を選んだ者は真っ先に振るい落とされる。
Conversely, if you have a gun that isn't up to modern standards, you'll be weeded out first.
お前が初めに覚えることは、手にしたものが良質か粗悪かを測る術であり。
The first thing you need to learn is the skill to tell whether the weapon in your hands is superior or inferior.
Yeah, I think that this Caanan side story is going to take the whole stream. I did not know it was going to be twice as long as the other one. I'm sorry. Guns are simple. Not nearly as complicated as people. You just pull the trigger. My father had handled weapons occasionally, but never showed me how to use one. Political struggle was his preferred form of conflict. And in the end, it was that bias that defeated him. I took up guns to avoid repeating his mistake, but also the feel of a metal grip in my hand seemed to suit me. At least, that was how it always felt to me. Maybe my fondness for weapons was deliberately ingrained into me by Siam's instruction.
女であることを忘れるな。どれほど優れた才能であろうと、体格は変えられない。
Are you serious, Zarmagus? It's that long? I'm gonna power through regardless. I've made up my mind.
Don't forget you're a woman. However superior your skills may be, you cannot change your physique.
複数の敵と拳銃で撃ち合うときは、最も近くにいる敵に向けて2発撃ち込む。命中していなくても、足指の付け根を軸に向きを変え、次の敵を撃て。
If you're facing multiple opponents
God.
with a pistol, shoot at the nearest target twice. Even if you don't hit, pivot with your knees and fire at the next enemy. Keep them all engaged, don't let them get close.
I mastered the basics that first year. Like, we are in a flashback within a flashback right now. That in itself is going on quite a while. I say this not out of any excess pride or self-confidence, but I was measurably the best of the soldiers other than Siam himself. After that, Siam and I began working jobs together. Sam was against it at first, but I had the ability, and he at least had the objectivity to acknowledge that fact. He was an exceptional teacher, and I was an even more exceptional student. I was an ideal subordinate, an inhuman combatant willing to use whatever I deemed useful to get an edge. I had countless brushes with death on the battlefield. The reality of war is that people die regardless of their tech, their experience, their abilities. I had to have accepted that reality when I lost my family, but it was the battlefield that made the truth completely clear. The society into which I've been born seeks to assign value with not just monetary terms, but for individual dignity and even ideologies. but only death is truly impartial. I was able to survive through all this largely thanks to Siam's aptitude. He wound up protecting me countless times, when my inexperience put me in peril. His intervention was not out of any fondness for me, but rather a cool calculation in the interest of completing the mission. He knew I could be counted on. Never much to look at, he accrued even more scars in the course of rescuing his risk-prone student. There was almost no place he hadn't been shot, except somehow in the head. Maybe there was a trick to that. I wanted to ask him secretly. There was no allowance for questions while he was my shield. I can only make such small talk once his time with my protector come to an end. And even then, up until this very moment, there had never been a good time to ask. I just wound up believing that Sam would never die. That no matter how many times people open fired on him, he simply wouldn't get hit where it really mattered. That was all probably a delusion on my part, of course. But the fact was that he just didn't die. Of course, his heart has already died sometimes before. Bullets couldn't kill someone who was already dead. He deserved my trust. We are of the same breed, he and I. Sam would always have my back, no question.
稀に超人的な兵士が現れる。
Every once in a while, a truly exceptional soldier turns up. Superhuman.
この先長く傭兵を続けていれば、そういう旗迷惑なものに出会うだろう。
Keep up your mercenary career long enough and you'll run into one sooner or later.
My training was complete. I was no longer a student but a mercenary, and this is what Siam had to tell me? I responded with sarcasm. What was this, some Hollywood script? Siam had never really joked with me before.
いや、SF ではなく現実の話だぞ。
No science fiction, this is as real as it gets.
兵士同士の戦闘、個人装備の性能の向上は頭打ちだ。戦場において一個の兵士は均等に死んでいく。次は俺のターン、その次はお前のターンといった風にな。
On the battlefield, individual gear and skills can only carry a soldier so far. Death comes for us all, equally. My turn could be next. And after that it might be you, you know?
だが中にはその平等を覆す怪物がいる。
But in the midst of that sort of deadly equality, there are monsters who can overturn the balance.
Siam went on to tell a story of two soldiers. Siam went on to tell a story of two soldiers, one wielding a revolver and one an automatic handgun. The wildly anachronistic revolver was no match for the automatic. Even disregarding magazine size, a higher rate of fire meant superior firepower, period. A machine pistol capable of firing 3-round bursts would turn the revolver user into Swiss cheese. Typically refers to a handgun capable of automatic or semi-automatic fire, though frequently also denotes a weapon between the size of the pistol and submachine gun. Because of their comparatively limited magazine capacity, such weapons are not, however, capable of the high volume of fire of a full-size machine gun. Famous models include the Beretta M93R and Glock 18. Some modern automatic weapons are equipped with a switch that allows the option of firing 3 bullets each time the trigger is pulled, compared to full auto mode, in which the weapon will fire continuously for as long as the trigger is held down. Firing 3-round bursts allows for better conservation of ammunition and control of the weapon.
そう、リボルバーとオートでは話にならない。
It's not about the technical limitations of the revolver versus the auto.
それが俺たちの認識であり、同時に兵士としての限界でもある。
It's about our awareness of those limitations, and at the same time our own limits as soldiers.
Siam went on, talking about how similar weapons could equalize the abilities of soldiers, and about those who had removed that collar from themselves and deviated from that equilibrium. For instance, the unparalleled gunfighter capable of rapid fire, like that scene in Hollywood Western, the type of character who'd actually existed. Experts who could fan the hammer, unloading 5 shots at a target in the span of a single second. Of course, simple rapid fire alone wasn't worth fearing. It had to be accompanied by the skill to put it on target. Siam had probably just been trying to offer an explicit example of a time when exceptional human skill could surpass the capabilities of the available hardware. And it all seemed too fantastical, but he had been dead serious. Apparently he'd run across such rule breakers in the past.
生まれついての戦争や重機の申し子、強運の塊、我々とは違う身体の機能、そういったものを持つ超人は稀に現れる。
Born warmongers, patron saints of small arms, lucky souls, people with different physical capabilities than you or I.
身体機能に天性の差があるのは言うまでもないが、その才能がピタリと戦争に符合する幸運な兵士。
Natural differences in physical prowess, sure, but also talents perfectly suited for war, maestros of the battlefield.
戦場でのみ人間の規格から逸脱し、一個の兵士では起こし得ない戦果を上げる者。
Soldiers far outside the norm.
Oh, god damn it.
Who can accomplish things no single soldier should be able to. When you meet an enemy like that, it's like staring down a storm.
Still, even according to Siam, such supermen could only deal with 3 or 4 opponents within any given moment. So assuming you had 5 or more to attack them in that moment, there'd be no problem taking them down. I was relieved. He wasn't talking mere fiction, but he also wasn't just telling some joke. So then what was his story all about?
お前は超人ではないが、極限ではある。それを自ら承知しているのも知っている。
You're not a super person, but you are superb. And moreover, you know yourself.
だからこそ気をつけろ。
Still, that's all the more reason to be on your guard.
5体の境界を誤らず、己の才能に頼るな。
Don't misjudge your body's limitations and don't depend too much on your own skill.
お前は完成されている。自分の性能を正しく把握しているのなら、決して破れることはない。
You are complete. So as long as you have a proper grasp of your own capabilities, you won't be defeated.
Thus did Siam acknowledge my ascendance to the status of a warrior. It was an achievement to be proud of, to be seen as his sole peer as a combatant, perhaps even his better. More than anything, the esteem I held for Siam was a reflection of the esteem he showed me. We were the same. That's why when the time came, I had scarred my left arm. I wanted a physical symbol of our connection. Okay, 1 flashback done. My god. Introductions were a simple affair. Siam had no need to give his name. Caanan had no interest in the woman's, and the woman seemed satisfied with what she knew of the other two.
呼び方はシャムとお嬢さんでいい?
Shall I just call you Siam and young lady then? The newcomer asked.
問題がないのなら、そちらの今の名前は?
Siam shrugged.
If you're okay with that, what name are you going by now?
ああ、連携は必要だな。カナンというのはどうだ?
Oh. Ah, yes. I suppose we'll need that to coordinate. How does Caanan work? Caanan couldn't suppress a sound of irritation. She tugged wordlessly on Siam's coat, like a pouting cat staking a claim to what it wanted for its own.
すまない。それは問題がある。
Sorry, but that might be a problem.
Siam replied.
冗談だよ。今は定かで通している。
I'm joking, the woman said. I'm actually going by Sadaka these days. In Islam, this refers to the act of giving spontaneous voluntary charity to the needy. It is distinct from zakat, a form of obligatory almsgiving.
それじゃあ、そろそろ本題に入ろうか。
Now then, shall we get down to the matter at hand? Sadaka explained how the job would unfold. They'd wait until the train had traversed for an hour beyond the border before moving against their objective. Hopefully they could finish the mission an hour before their arrival in Amman. Caanan peered at Siam's face as he and Sadaka spoke. His color was, as always, blue. That shift earlier to an unluckier color, the cloudy whiteness of an unfamiliar stranger, had lasted only for a moment.
目的となる貨物車両は3両目。その前後である第2と第4車両にはそれぞれ7人ずつ護衛が配置されている。うち第4車両の2人は定期的に後部車両の見回りをするようだ。
Our objective is the freight car, number 3, Sadaka explained. 7 guards apiece are stationed in cars 2 and 4 to either side. It looks like 2 of the guards from car 4 later patrol the back end of the train at set intervals.
そら、噂をすれば。
And speak of the devil. Without even shifting her gaze, Caanan could confirm the presence of 2 soldiers moving through the car at which she sat. 2 blue blotches passing by. The color of alert escorts. A rending inorganic blue. The color of fighters skilled in the use of the guns they carried. People who wear this color usually rub Caanan the wrong way. Just being near them made her uncomfortable. Sam was a contradictory counterexample. Despite his dangerous hue, he eased her nerves. But wherever the colors expressed themselves as painful or gentle didn't mean anything. The colors are merely colors. Whether warm or cold, everything was done neatly in simple colors, as if painted with run-of-the-mill materials.
列車の最後尾は同じく貨物列車だが、こちらに積まれているものは至って健全な物資だ。最悪の場合、ここに籠城できないこともない。
Yeah, God. I was thinking of that, Chi-chan. Out of context lines. Oh my God. The last car on that train is also a freight car. But everything in there is ordinary goods. If worse comes to worse, we could all conceivably hold ourselves up in there. Sadaka said.
まあ、催涙弾の一つでも投げ込まれればおしまいだがね。
Of course. If someone ever were to toss in a tear gas grenade or something, we'd be done for.
いや、交戦は避ける。
Let's try to stay away from any direct conflict.
Sam said.
目撃者も犠牲者も出すなというのがオーダーだろう。
The orders were to avoid both casualties and eyewitnesses.
ことは秘密裏に。
Agreed. We infiltrate the freight car.
連中が私たちに気づくのは、列車がアンマンに到着し、何もかも立ち去った後か。
The enemy won't know we're ever here until the train arrives in Amman, and we're already long gone.
いいね。 それは私の注文通りだ。
Over and done. Perfecto.
では確認する。
Let me just confirm then.
Siam replied.
輸送の真偽は明らかになった。我々の目的はこれの奪還に移行する。変更点は
We've established that they're transporting the weapon. Now our objective is to recover it and get out. Any changes to that?
ない。スポンサーとして同志の行動に期待し、また私もこれに参加する。
None. You do your part and I'll do mine. They've been just over 5 hours since they boarded the train. Caanan felt a sense of relief that at long last the action to be anticipating would finally commence. Their objective was to recover the parcel in the freight car toward the front section of the train. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-do. Damn, this sounds like, reminds me of music from GoldenEye 007. They would infiltrate the car without alerting the guards, acquire the payload, and then disembark from the train as if they were just normal passengers. Top priority was acquiring the item. Secrecy was secondary. If it turned out that they needed to take the payload by force, they'd been given permission to initiate combat. Violence was definitely on the table. If it came to that. If they were detected, they'd wind up in a 3-on-14 shootout aboard a train.
OK。私とシャムの役割はわかる。けどこの女は何をするんだ。そもそもどうしてスポンサーが出向いてくる。
Okay, Caanan said. I know what you and I are doing, Siam. What's her job, though? Why is her sponsor even here in the first place?
彼女の専門は暗号破りだ。
She's a code-breaking specialist.
本来なら別の人間を手配するんだが、急な話だったからな。昨日の時点で合流できる専門職は彼女しかいなかった。
Ordinarily, they wouldn't have sent the sponsor personally, but time was of the essence. When the plan fell into place yesterday, she was the only operative available to make the rendezvous.
暗号破りってそれなら。
And so they sent a code breaker?
そうすねるな。この道ではこいつは一流だ。お前もいい経験になるさ。
Don't be like that. She's an expert at what she does. This will be a good experience for you.
随分とらしくないな、シャム。
How not like you, Siam, Sadaka said.
カナンという子供にほだされたというのは本当だったか。
I guess the rumors about you going soft over some kid were true. Oh, it's just like all the stories.
人一倍手がかかっているだけだわ。
She's just causing me an epic amount of trouble.
そんな話が触れ回っているのか。
Why? Is that some of the sort of story that's been going around?
いいや。我々がカナンという優秀な人材を手に入れたという話ぐらいさ。
Oh, heavens, no. We just heard that you picked up some extremely capable individual named Caanan.
私もまさかこんなお嬢さんとは思っていなかったが。
I didn't expect she'd be like this young lady here, though.
私もお前みたいな女がスポンサーとは知らなかった。知ってたら2年もいなかった。
Well, I didn't know someone like you was our sponsor, Caanan replied. Not that we've seen much of you over the past 2 years.
それは違うな。私は多くの支援者のうちの一人だ。指導者じゃない。だいたい一紛争に本腰を入れるほど暇じゃないんだ。
Oh, you got the wrong idea. I'm only one of many of your supporters. I'm not a mentor. I don't have the time to play an individual part in every little scuffle.
そのくせこんな仕事に顔を出してるじゃないか。
But you've got time to show up in person for a job like this.
別件で近くに来ていてね。そのついでだよ。
As it happens, I do, Sadaka replied. I was already nearby dealing with another matter. And since I was in the neighborhood, I figure I'd pop a ride on the train.
今回はネタがネタだし、無視するわけにもいかんだろう。
And given the details of this mission, I couldn't simply ignore it.
すればよかったの。こんなの私とシャムだけで十分だ。
I wish you had. Siam and I can handle this on our own. The enmity between the two had become like a steady rhythm, driving along their conversation. It did make them interesting to listen to, for better or for worse.
定か、その別件とは何か問題でも。
What do you mean another matter, Sadaka?
Siam asked.
We here because there was some problem?
Oh. Caanan was intrigued. Siam wasn't the kind of person to ask irrelevant questions. Had he twigged something that might affect the mission? Twigged, eh? I've never heard that word before. Whatever the case, Sadaka smiled pleasantly.
プロジェクトの一つに問題が出てきてね。
An issue cropped up in one of our projects.
人材の調査と兵器の不具合の2点だ。
I've been looking into the personnel involved along with a flaw in the weapon.
そうだな。例えば、お前が懐に飲んでるものは殺傷能力が高い武器という触れ込みだが、当たったのに効果がないとクレームがあったとしたらどうだ。
Sorry for a second. An issue cropped up in one of our projects. I've been looking into the personnel involved, along with a flaw in a weapon. Here's an example. How would you feel if you were dealing with a gun that you expected to be quite lethal, but which an observer claimed to have no effect whatsoever?
何それ。そんなの不具合どころの話じゃない。
What's that mean? You're not talking about a flaw there, Caanan said.
れっきとした欠陥商品じゃないか。
That would just be a completely defective piece of hardware.
ああ、その通りだお嬢さん。今まで信頼していたものに欠陥があったでは、我々の信頼に関わる。
Yes, young lady. Exactly. When there's a defect in something you've always trusted, it affects that trust.
無視してもいい不安要素なんだが、取り除けるなら取り除いた方が商品になるからね。
You could ignore it and hope it won't cause you trouble, but you're better off ridding yourself of something that isn't up to snuff.
現地に行って問題点とやらを確認し、しかるべき対処法を提出する。つまらない仕事さ。
Ooh, so she's here because she doesn't trust Caanan. Alright, have a good sleep, Ji-chan. When such a situation arises, I head on site, assess whatever problems there are, and recommend an appropriate course of action. It's a boring job.
近頃はこんな駒遣いばかりだ。コードブレーカーならぬリスクブレーカーというところか。
These days I'm basically a maid. Less a code breaker and more of a risk breaker, you could say.
そう。偉そうにしてるけど、誰かの駒遣いなのは変わらないんだ。
I see. So you act all important, but that doesn't change the fact that you're just running errands.
まったくだ。まるで戦争の使いだよ。
Through a battlefield, yes. Sadaka brushed aside Canaan's insult with an air of confidence. Caanan scowled. This woman was so sure of herself. She turned away and gazed out at the scenery outside. And then she realized the snack she'd been gnawing on was gone.
Shamu.
Siam, Caanan hissed.
今日は多いな。そんなに不満か？
Take it easy, Caanan.
Siam said.
I know you're under a lot of stress.
シャム、話の途中だが少しいいか？
Siam, Sadaka interjected. Do you mind if I interrupt real quick?
簡潔に済むのなら。
So long as you keep it quick.
ああ。さっきから気になっていたんだが、お前の相棒は何を食べている？新手の携帯食か？
Sure. So I noticed that your partner has been nibbling on something. What is it? Some kind of new snack?
そんなものだ。試すか？
That's right. Wanna try some?
It's Pocky. Without saying anything, Sadaka took one of the offered treats. She tore open the paper wrapper on one end, then stuck the contents between her teeth like a cigarette, just as Caanan had. Caanan watched her resentfully, knowing what she was tasting. A simple, unpretentious sweetness. The purity of concentrated sugar. Oh my god. She's obsessed with Pocky.
ではなく、そのものだ。
Sugar? Sadaka said.
ただの砂糖じゃないかこれ。
Is that really all this is?
ああ、シュガースティックを固めたものだ。乾燥して固形化したものを見つけて以来、大のお気に入りでな。
Yes, hardened sticks of sugar.
品質で言うなら日本製のものがいいそうだ。
Damn, I think I might actually take a break soon. I am getting kind of tired. I did not expect this to be this long. We'll see how long I have left.
They're dried and formed into shapes. We've become big fans ever since we found them at a market. Nowadays, they use injectors to shape them. The best ones come from Japan, I hear.
Caanan focused on gnawing her own stick, not really listening to Siam's explanation. There was a brief silence. Sadaka let out a sullen sniff.
変わった思考だな。うまいのか？
You have strange tastes. You really like these things?
うん。無駄がないのはすごく美味しい。
Yes. I like that there's nothing to get in the way of the flavor. Sadaka raised an eyebrow dubiously. The time had come. They got up from their seats without a sound. Draped in their hoods, Caanan and Sadaka made their way through the train, doing their best to draw no attention. Siam had put together a timeline. You should spend no more than 30 minutes at most on their infiltration. In addition to the soldiers stationed in the passenger cars, it was possible that the enemy had also had lookouts disguised as normal passengers. A seat left open for too long might arouse unwanted suspicion. The team needed to sneak into the freight car, obtain the payload, and return to their seats without a single minute wasted. Caanan was too tall and muscular to be well suited for infiltration. He would hang back and act as the girl's rear guard. After the operation was discovered, his task would be to secure an escape route for them. We're in position. Sadaka called in on one of the tiny voice-activated radios that they carried. Synchronized watches. She and Caanan prepared to make their way to their final objective in the freight car up ahead. Despite their clashing personalities, they moved almost like twins as they went about their work. It was evidence that their training had instilled in them with similar priorities. No, just so I'm clear on this, Sadaka said. All you're bringing is that Beretta and one spare magazine. Yeah, hope you're okay with that.
戦闘になった場合、迎撃はお前に任せる。今回の私の仕事は暗号破りだ。接続用の PC と護身用に一丁あればいい。
Yes, if it comes to a firefight, I'll let you handle shooting back. My job here is code breaking. As long as I have my PC and someone to cover me, I'm good. Both of them were going in with a minimal loadout. As a covert agent in enemy territory, that made Caanan uneasy. But then if a fight did break out here, the mission was already a partial failure. The organization couldn't spare equipment for a team that only needed it if they fouled things up.
お嬢さん、ルートの確認は？
Have you checked out the room?
ルートそのものは問題ない。あるとしたら、そっちは大丈夫かってことぐらい。
The route's fine, as long as you're fine.
いいの？これ頭脳労働じゃないよ。
This isn't gonna be desk work.
専門外だが、その程度のリスクは多さ。それなりに経験もある。
Not my specialty, but an acceptable level of risk. This isn't my first rodeo.
お前は乗り物酔いはするタイプ？
What about you? You ready for this?
暴れ馬には慣れてるし、動くものから落ちたこともあんまりない。
I've ridden my share of wild horses. Once I get on, I don't fall off.
上等。忙しいね、お嬢さん。
That was Caanan saying that. I've ridden my share of wild horses. Once I get on, I don't fall off. Oh, quite the swashbuckling little heroine, aren't you?
で、サーカスの始まりだ。
Let's get this circus started. I wonder if this is like an actual episode of the show that they just took screenshots from. garb that the two girls wore under their cloaks was quite different from the norm for Middle Eastern women. Aside from the fact that one wore red and the other black, their outfits were rather similar. Both of them adjust for maximum freedom of movement.
潜入経路に問題はない。行動を開始する。
No problems with the infiltration route, Sadaka reported. We're on the move. With all the casual air of a traveler going for a stroll, without any hesitation whatsoever, she headed for the outside of the train. No problems with the infiltration route. We're on the move. The call cut out. From here on, the team would retain radio silence except in cases of emergency. I gotta know, is it possible to save? Oh no. Oh god, I can't save. Damn, how do they expect this is long as fuck? I can go back to the time chart, but that would probably, like, cancel everything out. Oh, God. Seriously? Oh, my God. Is there really no way to save? I guess. Because it feels like we're finally getting started with the actual mission. There's still quite a bit left to do. It auto-saves. Alright, I'll hold you to that, Zarmagus. I'll definitely try to work it out until next time. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm getting a bit tired. And I think right before they actually start the mission is a good place to cut out. Yeah. Oh my god, this is so much longer than I thought it would be. I'm so sorry, you guys. Let me change the stream title. I thought this would be as long as the other one. I am so sorry, you guys. Yep, Void Dweller, you knew that was gonna happen. I tried. I mean, the flashback within a flashback went quite a while. I didn't even realize this was gonna. Yeah, I had no idea that this was gonna be so much longer than the other one. I hope the other ones aren't this long. Damn. Okay, you guys. We'll hopefully finish this story next time. Starting with the actual mission. And, on Sunday, we're gonna go back to Rose Guns days. And, we'll pick this up on Tuesday. Until then, I will say, so long, farewell, Woody saying good night. You're all the sweetest of hearts. See ya.